So the Mighty Ant mindset is all around celebrating yourself for the effort that you're putting in. Ants are considered the strongest creature on the planet because they can lift up to 100 times their body weight.
Hello, carnivores, and welcome to session number 56 of the #1 bodybuilding podcast in the United Kingdom. Kerri Greig is 53 years old and spent most of her adult life, especially the last 15 years, overcoming chronic health challenges, including chronic fatigue, insulin resistance, cortisol imbalance, and in the last few years, she has realized that she's been autistic with both types of ADHD, that's hyperactive and impulsive, for her whole life without receiving a diagnosis or any accommodations, a very big factor in her cortisol levels. More recently, she's discovered that she has both copies of her C677 gene varied MTHFR, which greatly impacts her ability to absorb vital nutrients. Don't worry, I'm sure you're as worried and as confused as I am. Yes, Kerri will be helping me explain what this means. We're going to learn together on this one. Kerri has always believed in focusing on long-term health, physical healing with nutrition and lifestyle choices rather than quick fix medications, and making the connection between physical health and mental and emotional health. What Kerri has found to be most helpful has been her diet and lifestyle and other things like yoga and EFT tapping for working on her emotional traumas and blocks. When perimenopause hit, Kerri found herself with a significant weight gain and started experiencing terrible mood swings, anxiety, depression. She started cutting out sugar and eventually cut out grains and starches. She was diagnosed with IBS and started to follow a very confusing and restrictive low FODMAP diet. She had intestinal bacteria overgrowth and tried the autoimmune protocol, AIP, another confusing and restricting diet. Gradually, she realized that plants in general just weren't working for her. Welcome to our world, Kerri. And learned about oxalates and more that she had to cut from altogether and followed a strict carnivore diet. After 4 years, she healed, became stronger, joined a local gym, found Coach Mark Ennis, and has been successfully rebuilding her strength and docs on proper macros. Kerri hasn't been keeping track of the qualities of her macro intake and wasn't eating the correct amounts. Mark has helped Kerri to round off her physical healing and contribute to huge increases in her mental health as well. Now she is enthusiastic to share what she has learned with other people so that they can fully heal in a much quicker time frame. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest reasons that I love this show is because I feel like I'm going to college every single week, learning from people like Kerri. I'm excited to ask her questions about these topics as I've been studying meta-analysis, books, listening to podcasts nonstop on many of these topics that we'll be covering this week. Two quick things before we jump into the meat. Number one, here's our Spotify podcast review of the week. It is from Jenny Stevens. You make it a choice to be sustainable. I am 2 years, 8 months into this way of eating. I chose this for my health because I'm a cancer survivor. I feel so amazing that I will never go back. I chose to be pain-free. My joints don't hurt anymore, and I chose not to have GI issues. I chose to fight cancer with all that I have. So for me, this is sustainable. That was in response to our last session from last week, number 55. Diabetes management, how steroids change your personality, and Steven's pantry purge. So quite the testimony, Jenny. Thank you very much for writing in. You must be referring to the call-out video from that episode. I agree. Nothing is hard to sustain when you are seeing results. Keep up the good work, sister. All right. And then our L.I.S.S. We kick off every Carnivore Coaches Corner recording every single week with an L.I.S.S. And it does not stand for low intensity steady state. It stands for listener inspiring success story. That's a lot happier thing to think about, right? So this week's L.I.S.S. is from Samantha Kambeck. She is from Virginia. She is a horse trainer. She is actually a bikini client of mine. She was on our show several weeks ago, actually. But this is one of her recent check-ins with me and how she's feeling about full body workouts using high intensity, low volume training. This is a technique that we teach all the time on this channel. She is a coach herself with a busy life and a busy schedule, going through a lot. And so with that in mind, here's what she has to say.
It's been a thing, but I'll tell you what, between what God's been doing in my life and having just these amazing workouts to help me stay focused, help me stay fit and strong and, positive. It has such a positive impact on my mental and emotional state to know that I'm going to get up in the morning. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hydrate. I'm going to, get warmed up. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to get on the treadmill. I'm going to lift, like that routine and that positive impact on my body, just makes everything else that would normally have me be super stressed. And, the thing with Gary and his new job and him having to commute 100 miles each direction, for the, all this week and for the next 5 weeks while he's in this interim setup period on this contract, all that stuff would normally just make me a basket case, but I'm fine. I'm really fine. So I'm just figuring things out. I'm staying focused and I feel good. So that's the amazing thing. I just wanted to let you know, that's what these workouts are doing for me. If nothing else, they're keeping me sane and happy and pleasant to be around and work with. So, that's really awesome. But anyway, let me start another one.
Thank you for submitting your success story, Sam. Listeners, if you are a carnivore with an inspiring success story, contact Coach Mark or myself, and we will get your message out where people really need to hear it, because the carnivore community is growing. Yes, across the globe. It's exciting. The more we all share what's working for us, the more we will continue to learn and grow from each other. Kerri, welcome to Carnivore Coach's Corner.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Pleasure is all ours. Oh my gosh. Can you relate to what Sam is talking about? Is that kind of how Mark has you training in the gym too?
Yeah, I really related to her, saying how everything's improving her moods. That's been a big thing. And yeah, Mark's got me training with progressive weights, keeping the time under tension and focusing on the muscle and really making sure I'm working it as best I can.
I love it. Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's great to see that people that are understanding training now. I think a lot of people just feel like when it comes to training that you need to be in the gym for an hour and a half. I think it's very, very important to understand that you actually don't need to do that at all. I think it's very, very important that you don't need to complicate training. Training is very, very basic. You go in, you train the muscle. You're not an athlete. Unless you're an athlete, you will go into the gym and probably train for 2 hours. 95% of us that are listening to this podcast right now have busy lifestyles. We've got kids. We've got a busy life. We've got a lot of stress. We've got busy jobs. It's absolutely impossible. So if you feel like you can only go to the gym for half an hour 3 times a week, that's fine. But you need to make sure that half an hour there has to be a lot of intensity in those sessions. If you're just going into the gym and training for half an hour and looking at your phone, you're not training with intense. If you're going into the gym and you're putting everything into a half an hour, you can get a very, very good workout done in the half an hour. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good. Thanks, Mark. Okay, so let's go back to, I think we were talking before we hit the record button. You guys have been working together for 6 months. So how did that start?
Well, as you said in the introduction, I've been gradually healing my body with carnivore alone, just diet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just sort of one day knew I needed to actually start building more physical strength as well, and I was ready. And I got a DEXA scan to look at my body composition. I was worried about visceral fat in particular. So I wanted to see how much fat I had within my belly, abdomen. And luckily I had very little visceral fat, which is probably down to being on carnivore for as long as I had been at the time. But even though I was a small-framed person, my body fat percentage and lean muscle mass put me into a metabolically obese category. And no one would have thought that. I'm a size 6 to 8 Australian size clothing, which I think is about a 2 to a 4 American. And yet, on the metabolic level, that's how unhealthy I was.
Wow.
in an obese, I'm skinny obese. Like, there's the term skinny fat, normal weight obesity, metabolically obese, normal weight, thin outside, fat inside. It was really quite a shock to me to realize how dire the situation was. So I found Mark and we started working together, and like I said, he's been helping me to build up that strength, the lean muscle mass. It's not so much focusing on weight loss, and Mark always says this, and I see it, like the number on the scale is completely irrelevant. I had a good number on the scale, but I'm obese. Right, my BMI was good. I was actually almost at times bordering on the underweight category of BMI, and yet metabolically, I'm obese. So, do you know what I mean? Like, no one, not no one, but it's not a regular measurement or test or whatever. I was at the doctor's this morning with my husband for himself. And he weighed my husband, took his height and said, oh, you're in a good BMI, so that's excellent. And that was it. That was the end of it. And that's all that tends to get looked at, People often say, I want to lose weight, and they're only focused on what the kilograms or the pounds or whatever says on the scale. And it's not that at all. It's got to be lean muscle mass. Like the muscle mass is vital for our health and our longevity and quality of life, and even our brain function. Like, we'll have better brain function through having good muscle mass and the physical action of going through the motions of it working out.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in there. When I met Kerri at the very, very beginning, I knew within 2 minutes of the call what the problem was. I could see that she was very, very lean. I could also see that she was carrying a bit of a belly, and I knew that was down to a lot of things. It could be down to stress, it could be down to undereating, it could be down to many, many factors. A lot of women listening to this right now will be thinking, okay, you probably took her on to get her to lose weight. We actually started a reverse diet from day one.
Wow. What made you want to do that, Mark? You could just tell that her metabolism was shot, and because her weight was so low, but she just wasn't carrying it properly, and so that was just an indication that her body's hormones needed a reset. And so instead of having her eat less food, what did you do? Did you have her just eat more food in general, more of something in particular? Apples. It was apples, wasn't it? That's probably that was it. or honey, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, Colt, you hit the nail on the head. Hormones, absolutely key.
Yep.
I mean, we didn't focus on calories. Calories tell you nothing about the hormone. It tells you nothing about the endocrine system. Nothing. When I met Kerri, she was under eating. And I said to her, okay, on day one, you will not be overtraining anymore. You will not be doing loads of training anymore. You'll be only doing training for me 3 times a week, half an hour in the gym, and that's it. No more cardio, and I'll actually be increasing your food. I remember this conversation as if it was yesterday. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kerri, when we had this conversation, you were actually terrified when I said to you at the beginning, we're actually going to take a step backwards.
Well, I was shocked to find out that I was under eating.
Yes, people, what is happening? Hope everybody's good. So, if you're on TikTok, make sure you're following us on our account, Carnivore Coaches Corner. TikTok is flooded with fake coaches that give out horrible advice, shit advice concerning your health. If you don't believe me, get a load of this.
Alright guys, I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't do keto. Keto isn't a sustainable diet that you can do for a long period of time.
Not sustainable long term? You should really go tell that to the Eskimo tribes. You know who these people are, right? No carbs, no fiber, fatty meat all day, every day. And they eat like this their entire lives. That's pretty long term. Good thing they don't follow your advice.
It's because keto is not sustainable. When you go off of keto, typically people gain all their weight back and then some.
Time out. Nothing is sustainable with that attitude. If your marriage is important to you, don't cheat on your spouse. If your health is important to you, don't cheat on your diet. So if my wife, my 4-year-old daughter, and my 6-year-old son can sustain this way of living, then so can you, tough guy. Healthy choices are as tough as you want to make. And what's with all you idiots using this hashtag keto sucks? It's how I found your dumb video. You really need to stop saying that.
Make sure you give us a follow over there, okay? We also post meal prep videos, workout tips, and tips from top carnivore doctors and nutritionists from across the globe. Now, back to the show.
I just didn't know. I didn't realize. And definitely a lot of improvements happened through increasing those macros.
Yeah.
And I got more energy and I did get stronger. I started feeling my muscles growing just from eating better.
Yeah, and see that's what was happening at the very, very beginning. Kerri didn't realize that she was losing weight, but she was also losing muscle mass, and that's a big mistake.
Yeah.
And that's what the problem was. Everything was slowing down, and slowly but surely, she was slowly deteriorating, and we had to make sure we stop to that straight away. We needed to focus on, okay, we're not focusing on weight loss anymore. We're focusing on getting stronger, and Kerri's going to be a strong, independent woman going forward.
Wonderful. May I ask you a question about autism, Kerri?
Yeah. Sure.
How, I'm assuming that you're high functioning autistic. I'm the parent of a high functioning 6-year-old autistic young man, and he's basically got to be on this diet. Especially if he has refined sugar, things kind of go south behavior wise, and even food dyes, particularly red 40. I'm not sure. What happens to you just like emotionally, mentally when you go off diet? Do you see anything negative? Kind of like I see with my kind of like we see with our son.
Well, I would if I went off diet. Obviously, I've gotten to the point where I know I could not afford to go off diet now. So it's like some people consider things like autism and ADHD as actually being mental health related type of challenges. It's not mental health as such. It's a neurological difference of processing stimulus. So things like sugars, colors, all of those types of things, even salicylates. Funnily, you mentioned apples earlier. They're high in salicylates, and apparently they can have a reaction neurologically for us. So the mood swings, it can be anger, explosiveness, outbursts, meltdowns, all of that sort of thing. And it's a full-on emotional response because of the chemical goings on in the actual brain itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm reading a book right now called Fiber Menace, which is actually a thriller. It's an incredible book. It's by Konstantin, and his last name starts with an M, and it's Russian, and I have no idea how to pronounce it. But actually, I just finished it last night, cover to cover. This book is incredible. You read the first couple pages, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm never eating fiber ever again."
Yeah.
He shows you all the scientific studies, all the meta-analyses that mainstream media doesn't want to talk about. But on page 258, he actually had something to say about ADD and ADHD. So I think I might read it to you, and I want to know if you have any thoughts on it, if that's okay. But he goes, attention deficit order in adults. This condition is caused by impaired cerebral circulation, low blood sugar, and general fatigue. 3 factors depress the central nervous system and interfere with normal day-to-day functions and activities. And then ADHD, the H is for hyperactivity. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in children Since both elevated glucose and insulin are potent stimulants of the central nervous system, children respond to them with alternating patterns of hyperactivity and fatigue. Both states interfere with concentration and cause behavioral patterns that are considered abnormal. Shortly after affected children are placed on a low-carb diet, the symptoms of ADHD gradually diminish and eventually disappear. It just takes time for a child's pancreas to reduce the production of insulin and adapt to a new pattern of behavior.
Yeah, because it can also cause inflammation in the brain, I think, too much insulin and sugar and everything.
Yeah, that's where I think that's where this diet specifically helps, because it helps eliminate all the spikes and the blood sugars, and it keeps everything stable. Like when we look at the energy, it's either going to be up or it's going to be down. Most of the time when we look at these conditions, the energy levels are extremely high. Now, what is they're high because if you keep on feeding sugar to the brain, that's going to send a dopamine hit, and that's going to keep you actually even more hyperactive. So you want to be in a situation where you're able to reverse that. And the best way to reverse that is to find out what's causing the issue in the first place. And most of the time with sugar.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good stuff. You were following the FODMAP diet for a little while. That's a popular one here in the United States. Is it as popular there in Australia as it is over here? It seems to be like a lot of people kind of go there before trying carnivore, hoping that that'll fix some problems. But
definitely. I mean, that's what happened to me. I mean, it was trial and error. I just knew, like you said, when I was sort of perimenopausal and the mood swings kicked in really bad, I was able to see if I had something sugary, that's what spiked it. So then I just sort of gradually bits and pieces. Then it was grains, then it was starches, then found out about oxalates and phytates and things like that. I somehow came across low FODMAP, gave it a try. It's ridiculous. Like half a banana was acceptable, but you couldn't have the whole banana. And I think it was better if it was more green than ripe. So, it was just silly. And then the autoimmune protocol that we mentioned as well, that's another diet. And then things like nightshades. I went from starchy vegetables, got rid of them, started having non-starchy vegetables, then found out that nightshades are not good, cruciferous vegetables aren't good. So we sort of left with nothing else. And then I just knew how much better I felt. I heard about carnivore. Somebody mentioned it to me. I didn't even know about it until she said, try this. And, I had the usual response probably like, no plant, no nothing. And people still say that to me now, what? You're still not eating any vegetable? You're still not having any fruit? And it's like, no, it's just not worth it. And I'm way better without them.
So what's a typical day of eating look like for you today, Kerri?
A lot of eggs. I love eggs. Beef, bone broth, salt. Sometimes I'll have lamb. And that's kind of it. I'm quite happy eating almost the exact same thing every day. Butter. Have my butter. That's what it is. I eat for fuel, not for entertainment.
I'd say at the moment, Kerri, we're about 95% carnivore. If we didn't have the butter in there, we'd probably be full carnivore.
And the butter's an animal product too, and so no carnivore coach that's worth their cents is going to get after you for that. I love it.
No. Well, it might not be lion, but yeah, that's animal product only.
We're not far off.
Mm-hmm.
What is EFT tapping?
Okay, EFT is emotional freedom technique, and there are certain tapping points, mainly around the face, some on the collarbone and under the arm here on the head. And what you do is whatever issue you're working on, while you are thinking about and talking about that issue and repeating sometimes certain statements about the issue while you're tapping, it's interrupting the neurological pathways in the brain. Because you know how you think a thought enough times, you create a neural pathway, and it becomes stronger the more times you have that thought. So something happens, you have this thought, it gets stronger. Next time that happens, straight away you're in this mindset. So tapping interrupts that, and then you can actually create a new neural pathway. So you can release things you've been carrying for a long time and holding on to, let them go. You can just create a new thought process around the same issue, or let it go, or whatever, right? So you can work on food addictions even with EFT tapping. You actually focus on that food. I love that food. It gives me such a hit. I enjoy it, blah, blah, blah. And then you can tap and say, I don't need it. And it sounds crazy, but it works. It's brilliant.
Wow. Have you found EFT and yoga to be easier since going carnivore? More enjoyable?
Yes, definitely. Like the less inflammation in my body, joints, absolutely. No headaches.
What does mighty ant mindset mean?
Okay, so when I've always known, the chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and all of those other things, you feel weak, less than, smaller. If we compare ourselves to other people, which the human sort of condition, we do have a tendency to do that.
Oh yeah.
You can often say, well, I'm smaller than them, I'm less than, I'm not as good, or whatever. So when I started working out in the gym and realizing just how bad my muscle loss had gotten, I just felt bad. Like I felt weak. I felt not very positive about myself. And then I started realizing that, I may be smaller, in my definition of smaller and lifting a lot lighter weights than other people are lifting. It's not to do with the effort I'm putting in. I'm putting in as much effort as I physically can, and that's all anyone can ask. And a person next to me who might be lifting heavier weights, it just might not be as much of an effort for them to do what they're doing in comparison to what I'm doing. So therefore,
exactly.
I'm actually working harder, and I can recognize that in myself, and I can acknowledge that. And so the Mighty Ant mindset is all around, first of all, not comparing yourself negatively against other people, but also like celebrating yourself for the effort that you're putting in.
Mm-hmm.
Ants are not the smallest creature, but they're very small, but they're considered the strongest creature on the planet because they can lift up to 100 times their body weight.
Yeah.
So it's kind of along those lines, what we're putting in, how hard we're fighting for what we need for ourselves,
Yeah, that's the biggest misconception. You just nailed it there, Kerri. The biggest misconception you see from most people is when they walk into the gym, they want to copy off everybody else. They'll see someone doing a bench press and they'll walk over and say, I can do that. Or they'll go to a squat bar and they'll attempt of what the guy beside him was doing like 5 minutes ago. They'll probably just do 1 or 2 reps and expect to get results, and nothing ever happens. And you'll see most people going into the gym when they're doing an exercise. They'll do an exercise, they'll do a few reps. Straight after that, then they'll jump off the machine, look on their phone, and there's not an ounce of sweat coming out of their body. Now you're training. You understand training now. You understand the intensity that goes into those sets. Those sets that you do for me are extremely tough. They're tough for you because you understand the biological aspect when it comes to muscle building. It's not about lifting a weight from A to B. You're really like you mentioned, you're really tapping into the muscle. You're allowing the muscle to fail and nothing else.
yeah, and the reward and the benefits for me, like that's giving me my life. Like it's just, it's got nothing to do with if I can lift as heavy as anybody else. You don't want to reward the people and celebrate the people that can lift the heaviest just because they can lift the heaviest. Sure, like that's great. The effort though, you know, if someone can pick up something that's 100 kilos like this with one finger, and I can pick up say 30 kilos, and I'm going, you know, then I'm seriously, I'm working like a lot, you know. So that,
yeah, 100%,
you know,
100%, yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
The least you do in the gym, the better. It's not about going into the gym and doing excess weight and doing sets after sets after sets. That's when you cause stress. That's when you cause levels to elevate. You're putting an awful lot of pressure in your body. Your body will eventually break down, and then you're back to square one. It's not worth it.
No.
Absolutely. I have a question for you on IBS, if that's okay, Kerri.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, this is something that I'm kind of unfamiliar with. I have some clients that have that have UC and that have Crohn's, GERD, and this seems like it's a different type of issue. But I just looked it up. Irritable bowel syndrome is characterized by abdominal discomfort, bloating, and a change in bowel habits, constipation, or diarrhea. There is no single cause for this condition, but environmental factors such as changes of routine, emotional stress, infection, toileting behaviors, and diet can trigger symptoms. Does that all sound about right? What is it? What is it like? What does it feel like?
Well, it's uncomfortable. It's depressing. You know, it was like no matter what I ate, I would bloat. I was always burping. I was always passing gas. It's inflammation in your gut and bowel, basically. And what I know now is about how, and what you know, how awful fiber can be, how inflaming and irritating and irritable, like it makes it irritable. So were you asking me how that impacted me at the time? Basically, yeah, it was just the discomfort of being constantly bloated, having all that gas.
Yeah, and I think I only spoke to someone there about 5 weeks ago. I took this lady on because she's suffering with this condition at the moment. She's suffering with IBS, and for years and years and years, she's been trying to get to the bottom of it. And when to see her doctors, these doctors were putting her on spirulina tablets. They were giving her extra fiber, and they were actually doing more damage to the gut than actually fixing. And that was the problem. And when we look at most people that are going through IBS, a lot of people that are going through IBS, I can guarantee you most of those people are on high fiber diets, and they don't actually realize that it's fiber that's actually causing the damage.
In more ways than you'll ever think it really is.
Yeah. And that's the problem. Unless you eliminate it, like I'm talking about all fiber, you take it all out of your diet, I guarantee you're still going to have those issues. And when you hear people say that, listen, it's impossible to cure IBS unless you're taking medication, complete and utter horseshit.
The only thing fiber does is feed some of those microbes that live in our gut.
Yeah.
And they produce gas.
Absolutely. And that's it. And you put a lot of fiber in your stomach, it takes a long time for that fiber to digest. So when people say that, okay, I'm going to go on a diet, okay, the best thing to do is go on a high fiber diet. It's going to keep you full. Of course, it's going to keep you full, but you're going to be very, 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 very sore. You're going to be walking around bloated. That's not fullness. So there's a massive difference. If you're walking around bloated, you're gassing, you're farting all the time, your energy low. That is not fullness. It's the fiber takes ages to break down. We cannot
Yeah.
break fiber. It's that
Yeah,
We
we're
don't-
we're not cows. We don't have the ability to digest it the way that they do. They have 4 stomachs that are dedicated to that purpose.
Exactly.
On page 16, Constantine says, why does there's 2 good paragraphs that he has here on why fiber causes bloating and why fiber causes gas, to your guys' points. Why does fiber cause bloating? Well, because fiber fermentation inside the intestines produces gases, because the acidity from the fermentation causes intestinal inflammation, and since the absorption of the gases is the primary function of the intestine, then the combined impact of that and then blocking their absorption, that causes the intestines to expand just like an air balloon. And then why does fiber cause gas? Well, the intestines are colonized with symbiotic bacteria. These are the bacteria in our stomach that like helps us digest. It's a symbiotic relationship that we have with these organisms, and they live inside of us and they help us digest our food. So normally mucin, a component of mucus, provides bacteria with the nutrients that they need. But when fiber, soluble as well as insoluble, reaches the lower intestine, the bacteria go wild, they ferment everything in sight, and they multiply prodigiously. This fermentation is accompanied by lots of gases, just as with yeast rising dough or aging champagne. If you don't experience gas after ingesting fiber, then it means that your intestines lack normal bacteria and you are affected by dysbacteriosis, a serious pathology which is explained later in the book.
Yeah, and like Kerri said, it's inflammation. I always say this to people as well. When you look at IBS, in my opinion, IBS is down to one thing, and it's all down to your gut is inflamed. It's chronically inflamed. So when you look at the food you're eating now, you could be on low FODMAP at the moment. You're eating like say low vegetables. Your grains are low. You're eating a lot of nuts. You're eating a lot of seeds. You may think, yes, this is all healthy, but if you're eating and you're walking around bloated, guys, it's not healthy. It's not healthy. You need to stop doing it. It's okay. You should not be walking around bloated. You shouldn't be. No matter what you differently, you shouldn't be.
Yeah. Very, very good. Thanks, Mark. It seems like fiber is really the root issue, the root culprit of Crohn's, GERD, IBS. It's like they're all connected, and it all is rooted as to what's happening in your gut when you eat fiber. And it's just a matter of whether this sickness manifests itself in the form of Crohn's disease, or like something what you've been through. But we all come to the carnivore diet for different reasons, and it seems to just work for no matter who sticks with it long enough, really. So cool stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, good chat, guys. Kerri, where can everybody go to find out more about you and about your inspiring journey? Ask you questions.
Okay.
How'd you do it?
Pardon, what was that last bit?
Oh, and said ask you question. How'd you do it?
Okay, so I've got a Facebook page, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and a YouTube channel. So this might be my first YouTube video.
Heck yeah. We'll put it back up on your channel too.
Thank you. So locally, I'm going to do some talks for my local community and things like that, but mainly on the social media aspect, it's going to be those platforms.
Good stuff. And they can find all of those where?
The Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Oh, so it's the Mighty Ant Mindset.
The Mighty Ant Mindset. Got it. All right, Mighty Ant Mindset. Everybody, look her up on Instagram, and from there you'll be able to find YouTube, Facebook, the other platforms she was talking about. Kerri, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so very much. Your testimony is super inspiring, and we need to have this conversation again soon, I think.
No worries. I'll be happy to be back.
Well, that's it for this week's session, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening, and make sure to let us know what you thought. You can do that directly from your podcast app, or you can DM Coach Mark or myself on Instagram. You can also email your feedback, questions for us, and more specific topics that you'd like us to teach on next. If you need some gym motivation, look no further than our workout podcast called the SuperSetYourLife.com podcast. We are well over 200 episodes on that channel, and it's available on the same platform that you're listening to now. Just type Superset Your Life, all one word, into your search bar, and you will see our black and white podcast logo pop up. It's a podcast specifically recorded to listen to while you work out. We regularly interview professional bodybuilders and judges, top nutritionists, leadership experts, stand-up comedians, and top athletes from supersetyourlife.com. We keep the focus on health first, bodybuilding, faith, and family. My wife Taylor and I are the hosts of that show as of 3 years and growing, and Coach Mark Ennis has been an enormous part of all we do there as well. One last reminder before we sign off, leaving a review just takes a couple seconds, guys. If you're on Spotify, where you can see where it says show notes, right underneath that, there's a spot that says Q&A, and that's where you can tell us exactly what you think of the podcast, guys. We will respond every single time when we record the following week, either by reading your review out loud or by discussing the topic that you would like to know more about, or even by getting to work on whatever critiques that you have about how we can continue to improve this show. And that's how we communicate, as a dialogue in this intimate conversation that we call Carnivore Coach's Corner. Share this with a friend if you found it helpful. We'll catch you next week, as always, on session number 57.